Olivia, you are a CEO, a founder of a company, co-founder of another society. You've written on Substack quite often, as well as hosting a podcast. You split your time between working with startups in Silicon Valley and also in Brussels. And you're the author of a book. Did I miss anything?
Oh gosh. I don't think so, although all of that listed together makes me sound a little bit insane.
How do you do all this, and how do you do it so effectively?
Well, I'm glad it comes across as effective. There's definitely days where I'm sitting there going, "What in the world?" But I think all of it is connected towards a root of a message, a root of a direction that I'm headed towards. So at the end of the day, I can double up efforts in a lot of different directions, and I'm passionate about what I'm doing, so it keeps me up at night.
Yeah. So what do most days look like for you? Are you working every hour you're awake?
No, I'm actually pretty strict, which I think some people would come find as a surprise. For example, I don't work weekends. That's a very hard rule for me. And I try and sign off probably around 6 or 7 at night. Um, it's been trial and error. There were definitely years where I was working every single waking moment. And
Hmm.
to be fair, even if I'm not sat in front of my computer with some clients, it does run in the back of my head. But I noticed that the stricter I was with the time that I'm working in, the more effective I am in that time. And
Mm.
the more I feel human and the more I feel like me in the in the rest of my life.
Yeah, I guess it's like you'll be more effective in the hours that you're working in. So is it normally like 9 to 7 p.m. and then what are you doing on the weekends if you're trying not to think about work?
Yeah. Um It is kind of like a 9 to 7. It depends. I think, eh, well, I'm sure we'll talk more about the split. When I'm in San Francisco, I think it's more of like a 7 AM to maybe 5 PM, and then
Yeah.
Brussels might be more like a 10 AM to 7 PM. So it'll shift.
Yeah.
It's interesting. My working style will change a little bit depending on what culture I'm in at the moment. But weekends, I try and get outdoors. I'm with friends. I love cooking. I love dancing. I love hiking. So it's one of those combination, or maybe a combination of three, or sometimes I'm even just staring off into the distance, giving my mind a chance to rest.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of San Francisco area, California, you grew up in the Redwood City area in Silicon Valley, right? So for someone who's never been there, could you describe the culture and the atmosphere to an outsider? Because I've never been, but I'm really obsessed with the people and the companies and the whole vibe around that area and what it's produced for the world.
Yeah. So Redwood City itself is it's suburbia at the end of the day. And I like to joke because a lot of people don't know Redwood City, but a good chunk of people will recognize Palo Alto because Palo
Yeah.
Alto is the headquarters of Facebook. So I like to say Redwood City is the redheaded stepchild of Palo Alto. We're right next door, and we try so hard to be cool, but we really aren't at the end of the day. But it's an interesting place to grow up in because I our downtown is full of tech offices. So we've got, if you're familiar with Dropbox, Dropbox is
Yeah.
headquartered in Red City. They've taken over a good chunk of our downtown. I, growing up, was a hostess at a gastropub, a Scottish gastropub actually, and it was a favorite local spot for all of the tech startups. Their corporate lunches and dinners, and so I got to see a lot of that behind the scenes. And it's you're just kind of absorbed into tech being a thing that sits at the table. I don't want to call it a person, but it is this overarching theme that trickles its way into conversations. It's from the first day in high school and middle school and so on. Like you're taught about how tech works. You're taught about the industry. You're taught about what it means to be an entrepreneur. That's definitely a heavy push, and it creates a really inspiring place to grow up in because you grow up with this idea of I can do anything that I put my mind to. I know that sounds really cheesy, but like this internal motivation that yeah, I can go out there and I can impact and I can build something on my own. But on the other hand, it also creates a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure to perform. There's a lot of focus on performance. So good and evil on both ends, but It's an interesting place. I'm grateful that I grew up there.
It really does sound like the opposite of the UK where I grew up. It's like the weather's the complete opposite. And also, I guess the expectations kind of feel like the opposite as well. There's not a big expectation that you're there to do stuff and build things, which is probably why I'm so attracted to that area. It just seems like it is a magnet for people around the world that have that personality type of the entrepreneur, of the type A, especially if they're interested in tech. And you said you worked in a Scottish gastro
Yeah,
cuisine kind of restaurant. How much haggis did you serve? Did they do that as their speciality?
they did. Haggis, oh my goodness. Haggis was on and if anyone ordered it at it was called Martin's West, and if anyone ordered it, we usually had to warn them, "Hey, this is a little bit different. It's gonna taste gamey. It's gonna be maybe a little bit not off-putting." I thought Martin's West did a great haggis, especially after I did some time in Edinburgh and I was able to compare the haggis, but, it wasn't our most popular menu item. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. So I was actually going to link those two together. So you worked in a Scottish gastro cuisine restaurant,
Yeah.
and then you went to Edinburgh to do your masters. What made you go to Edinburgh?
Oh gosh, Edinburgh is an interesting one for me. So it came kind of as 2 points, if I'm being honest here. So when I did my semester abroad, I did a lot of traveling, and there were a couple of cities that I visited that really stood out to me. For some reason, they just kind of felt like home. 2 of those cities were Brussels and Edinburgh, and so you can tell I live in one of them now,
Yeah.
so it definitely feels like home. But with Edinburgh, I remember going to apply for master's degrees and that it was sitting in the back of my mind of, "Oh, well, let me check out the programs there." And I know the University of Edinburgh is well known for its philosophy department. And so I applied to a couple different universities, and when it came down to making the decision, it was a combination of Edinburgh was allowing me to essentially pull together, kind of duct tape together what was the early days of AI ethics, when it wasn't necessarily a direct degree, but had some great classes offered for that. So really great degree program. But then also just that gut instinct of, this felt like home for some reason. I think I should be going here.
Why do those two feel like home? They don't seem at all like San Francisco, Redwood City vibe.
They aren't at all. And I think I've had a lot of, I've had different cities feel like home at different times. Rome's definitely one that always feels like home to me. And San Francisco, of course, will have that piece. Brussels now, I think, is one of the strongest pulls, but it's something about the atmosphere. It's something about the feeling of the city itself. I can't ever really figure out how to get it into words, but
Mm.
it's one of those where you're there and you go, yeah, I feel kind of that sense of calm and peace of I could do this. I like this here.
Yeah. So you move away from the valley, from California. Once you're out of that bubble, are there any problems with Silicon Valley that you realized once you ventured out?
A lot. And I mean, I think this is true of any bubble that exists out there, but
Mm.
Silicon Valley has it's good and it's bad. I think a lot of times now, probably one of the biggest problems I see is it's such a closed ecosystem. So
Mm.
it's a concentrated space where you have all of these people that are developing the cutting edge all of this cutting edge technology that is spread across the world, yet the people in this bubble rarely ever have a worldview. And the challenge there is the mindset that they have is that they do have a worldview. Yet, being someone that spends half of her year literally living in a different part of the world and coming back to San Francisco, there's times where there's conversations where I'm listening and I'm going, "You are so out of touch with reality." Not
Mm.
necessarily in a bad way, but just that's not how the majority of the world views life or something simple, about how they're going about their days. So I think that bubble has become very concentrated. I would say the other thing here is this is a little bit more controversial about Silicon Valley, but I've noticed it over the years is it used to be this hub of innovation, and now I like to be a little sassy and say that it's that innovation has really become stale. It's a lot less
Mm.
about iteration, it's more about innovation, and it's more about iteration nowadays. There's a set kind of template that you follow, and seeing true innovation is becoming less and less common. So I think it is really in need of a breath of fresh air to come through and shake things up a little.
Mm. There seems to be these hubs in the world at
Yeah.
certain points in history. At one point, it was actually, I think, like London, Oxford, and Cambridge when the British Empire was at its peak. Roman, like the Holy Roman Empire and the Roman Empire, and then Detroit in America when it was steel and cars, and
Yeah.
I think it was the Iron Belt often turns into the Rust Belt. Do you think that's the same fate Silicon Valley is going to have, and it's going to move elsewhere, where the innovation moves to a completely different location? Do you think that could happen to Silicon Valley in the next few decades or not?
Yeah, I'm curious. I think there's definitely a bubble that will pop. I wonder how quickly it will move though, because the thing that's really interesting about the Silicon Valley that's hard to understand unless you have worked in that ecosystem or you've been a part of something around it is the concentrated resources that all exist
Yeah.
there. It is a close, almost like a closed loop ecosystem at the end of the day. So where technology has developed, in order for companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and these massive behemoths, they need that amount of resource. And I'm not just talking about natural resources, but this is funding natural resources, human capital, all of that, and that's still concentrated around the valley. So yes, I do think the bubble will pop and things will move on. I don't know how quickly that's going to happen or if Silicon Valley will ever rust, if it will ever be completely blown over just because of what's been built there.
Mm. Yeah. Time will tell, I guess, but hopefully it doesn't. I really do want to go there. And you were saying how the people's view of the world and how things are run on the day to day are completely distorted compared to other places now you've been traveling. Do you have any like specific examples? Maybe not a specific person you've spoken to, but the kind of distorted views that they have about how the world works for them versus the rest of the world.
Actually, I have a very funny one, and this is a personal example. So I have spent most of my adult life living over in Europe, where cities aren't necessarily tech forward, meaning you have technology that is trickled throughout the city, but it's still there's a lot of analog and manual processes that exist. Like for example, here I pay my water bill by post still. I kid you not. So, I'm learned to live as an adult in cities where tech wasn't necessarily ingrained in the DNA of that city
Mm.
versus San Francisco. Tech is quite literally a part of the DNA of the city of how the social scenes run, how dated activities are run, how the infrastructure of the city is run. So there are times, even now, where I'm in San Francisco and I feel like I am, no offense to the boomers, but I feel like a boomer where I'm sitting there going, what do you mean? What do you mean I need an app and how do I function and how does this work? And it's not that I'm actually very tech savvy and very tech and very, very literate when it comes to AI and the advanced technologies, but the day-to-day ingrained pieces like how to operate a lift bike. And there's an app called Partiful that everyone puts every single event, including like dinners on. And those still feel very foreign to me.
Mm.
Whereas if someone that has been in San Francisco for their adult life were to do this opposite, I notice there's that frustration of like, what do you mean you're not tech savvy and using AI all over the place? So that's one, maybe not distortion, but just blind spot that exists where when you live in the valley, tech is just naturally a part of your everyday life and everyone there's a high technical literacy. That's not the case when you move outside of it. And so you get a discrepancy basically of that literacy level that can make it difficult for adoption of technology even outside of the valley.
Is that just because it's the closest place from where the tech companies can go to test their new prototypes? It's almost like a prototype culture where you guys have all of the new gadgets and technology before the rest of the world does because it hasn't scaled yet.
Yes, we're guinea pigs. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of European cities, you've been to a lot of European cities. You've mentioned a few, but there's one in particular that you were in 2015. You were in Paris during the ISIS terrorist attacks. You were in your Airbnb was in the right of the midst of the attacks. Does this experience still affect you looking back like 10 years later? It's almost, I think it's been over 10 years now, just over 10 years since this.
You've done your research. Wow. That one.
It's my job.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. It's been a long time since anyone's asked me about that. Yeah, it was, that was an interesting time. I think it's, uh for a couple of years after, it was definitely sirens would still, not set me off, but you get that feeling,
Mm,
that sinking in your chest. So I
yeah.
definitely had an edge for a while. I think from that, though, it gave me a bit of a perspective, and let me figure out how to get this into words. So
Mm,
I I noticed how a lot of people after those attacks happened went home. So left Europe, left well, if they were in Paris, left Paris and kind of ran away. Um and I remember the day after the attacks walking around going, well, this is someone else's reality, and I am now a part of that reality, and this is not something that I can run away from. This is something that I don't hide behind a wall from and hope that I stay safe.
mm,
It's something that I'm going to face. And I think that's carried on with me to the current day where I see someone's reality, or I see something that um is maybe not my reality, or something that I necessarily have to face on a day to day, but I'm not going to run from it. It's still something there to face, and I don't I don't want to use, say, the privilege of going and hiding away in another country, or going and hiding behind walls. I want to be out there and getting my hands dirty where I can.
yeah. So do you think it gave you a new level of empathy that you maybe not had before, just because you were in maybe more of a comfortable and bubble like existence, and being on the front lines of something so horrible that really just gave you new perspective on the world?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to summarize it. Yeah.
Mm. And could you take me back to like what you were feeling and thinking in the Airbnb? How did you realize the attack actually occurred nearby when you were with your friend?
So so my friend, I was actually it was my ex-boyfriend at the time.
Ah, okay.
He was training. The reason we found out was he was training to be in the US military, and his commander called him up. And that was, I think, the scariest part, because his commander calls him up because he had to notify his commander every time he was going to travel. So his commander knows he's in Paris, and he gets this call, and his commander goes, "All right, next call, you're gone. Like, you're being flown out." And he looks over at me and he's like, "What do I do about my girlfriend?" And his commander goes, "Is she American?" And I had left my American passport in Rome. I'm a dual citizen, so I was there as an Italian. And he goes, "Yeah, but she doesn't have his passport." And his commander goes, "Then you got to leave her." And I think
Wow.
that was the scariest part of sitting there going, "Oh, okay, this is my reality. I'm not going to get flown out if this gets worse, and I'm going to be here alone. Okay, I got to figure out what to do." So
Mm,
that was definitely, I think, the most n- n- not necessarily terrifying, but one of the most shocking moments of that experience.
mm. Yeah. And what did it feel like for you when you realized that was the situation? It's almost like you weren't in control anymore of your life for that day or two.
Yeah.
Wait, hold that thought. I'm genuinely so grateful that you've stuck around with us to listen to these fascinating insights from the guest so far. If this episode has given you one piece of knowledge which has helped you understand yourself and the world a little bit better than before, the absolute best way to support us is to pay it forward and hit the share button right now. Don't let this knowledge stay hidden. Please send it to one person who will benefit from this episode. Thank you so much. Let's dive back into the rest of the episode.
I think for me, and I've had experiences in my life where they are traumatic in their own in their own ways, and uh, I've had a house burned down next to me.
Wow.
I've stopped burglars breaking into my house. Like I've had these experiences, and each and every one of them, it's comforting after things have passed. The moment's not comforting, but after things have passed, because I don't freeze. If
Mm,
you ever wonder if you are fight or flight, I am very much fight, as I have found out many times over. But I kick into, okay, this is the circumstance. Fine, I'm going to figure it out. And I think that carries over quite often, also just into the ups and downs and turmoils of being an entrepreneur. It's these
mm,
are my circumstances. Okay, I'm going to figure it out. So I have over time just built up that muscle memory or that resilience that whatever comes my way in the most surprising and unsurprising of ways, I will be okay to the best of my
mm.
ability.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. So did you beat up the burglar who was trying to break into your house?
Okay, you're gonna laugh. I chased him out with a knife, but
Wow.
it was a camping knife that I had out that I was prepping for a camping trip, and I was just lucky that I had it out, and yeah, I did chase him out of the house.
When was this? Where was this and when was this? Was this recently or was it quite a while ago?
This was Brussels. This was about 2, 3 years ago now.
Is it the same house you're in now as well?
No, no, God, no. I did move, a few months after that. That house was hilarious. We had a break I had a break-in, and then the house next door burnt down. So I went, "All right, we're gonna take this as a sign. I'm gonna move."
Yeah, cut your losses while you can. So did they just open? Was the door unlocked, or did he break through your window and then you just were there in the house at night?
It was early in the morning, and yeah, I was living in a coloc, which is very common here in Brussels. They have these old houses, and they're beautiful old houses, and everyone's got all of their different floors and everything, and someone it was the Belgian national holiday, so someone had left the window propped open.
Mm,
The Belgian national holiday is basically everyone goes out drinking till 4 in the morning or something like that, and one of the other people in the co-location, sorry, um, had propped open the window, and so it was a couple of teenagers that were looking to steal and get a couple of easy things. So I was lucky it wasn't necessarily a violent break-in, but it was,
mm.
um, being the one that caught them and then chased them out was was a different kind of
Yeah.
surprise.
Yeah, no, it sounds absolutely terrifying, but luckily you didn't freeze. And is it true that you were down the road from where one of the attacks actually happened in Paris 30 minutes before? Because that sounds terrifying as well.
Yeah, that one, we were quite literally down a block from where the attacks happened. And I remember when we started seeing the attacks come up. So we're watching the news at this point in French, and this was at a time where I didn't speak French, so I don't know how accurate things were. We were seeing where it was mapped out, and I remember them showing one of the locations, and we turned to each other and we go, "That's we walked right by that 30 minutes ago."
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow, that's petrifying. Do you still get flashbacks and fear and sadness to this day? You said about the ambulances whizzing past. How often do you think about it now? Have I just, reminded you of it after a
you
long time?
definitely you've jogged an old memory. You've definitely jogged an old
Apologies.
memory. No, no, not in a bad way. I It's interesting because it's something over time that has it used to carry a lot more weight to it, and now it's something that is a part of my story, and so the moments where it does get brought back up and I'm reflecting on it again, it's more of I don't even know how to describe this feeling. It's like, yeah, that happened, and I'm okay, and it's given me more texture within my life and another reference point where I wasn't on the exact street when the attack happened. I wasn't right next to that attack, thank God, but I have at least a reference point when I'm seeing on the news now cities get shut down, or the kind of fear, the terror that starts to go through a city at that point in time. So in a weird way, there's almost it sounds very, very weird to say there's a gratitude there, but it is I'm glad I have that reference point
Mm.
as it keeps its grounding is probably the right word to use here.
Yeah, yeah, because for most people, the majority of people, I guess, luckily, they just see terror attacks as something that's props up on the news every few months. But having
Yeah.
that perspective of what's actually happened a few blocks away from you, it makes you feel it way more. And I guess, again, makes you be able to empathize with the sufferers and the people who, and the victims of it way more, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would
Yeah.
never wish this on anyone to be anywhere close, but, life hands you a set of cards and you figure out what to do with it.
Yeah. And is it true that one of your professors at Baylor University helped you find acceptance or get through it? Is that true?
I was actually a professor at the University of John Cabot, the university that I did the exchange at, and he so I'll give a little bit more context to this story. I was in Paris actually for my 21st birthday, and the attacks happened the night before. And I know in European cultures, you hear 21st and it's kind of like, yeah, yeah, whatever. American cultures, it's something quite big. It's your
Yeah.
21st, it's a milestone.
You can
And
drink.
you can drink. I mean, I'm in Europe at this point, so I was already, I could already go out for a glass, but it is a milestone. It's something, over time, you have these different milestones in life. And as you pass them, it's a way to mark time. And so this big milestone for me, this very, very big milestone for me was erased in a way because it
Mm,
was consumed by what had happened with those attacks. And I remember talking with my professor in Rome and just saying like, why do I feel a sense of loss? I'm fine. I wasn't on the streets. I am incredibly grateful. I returned safely. Like I'm safe. Why what's happening? Like why do I keep feeling that? Um and we were able to talk it through and he goes, "Well, that was a milestone that now that was a not a casualty, but that is gone. That's something that you
mm,
will never get." And everyone has a reference point. Americans, we share stories of our 21st birthday. I don't share the story of my 21st birthday. So it's that aspect of it is I think an interesting one of eh, being able I'm really grateful to that professor because he was able to know able to see through beyond just the, like, physically you're fine and able to see, okay,
mm,
there is something more here, and that's 100% valid that you have that feeling of loss, um, and it's not necessarily a trivial one. It's, yeah, it was a lot of me not discrediting it, but not wanting to overemphasize it because physically I was okay. Um,
yeah.
so it's still something that's a little difficult to get into words, but
It's almost like maybe a sentimental, like a spiritual loss. The fact that you weren't able to have a normal 21st birthday, which is a massive, I'm aware it is a massive thing for Americans. So it can make complete sense, like complete sense. And I feel like it doesn't matter. It's obviously a good thing that you weren't physically harmed and the people
yeah,
that were physically harmed is obviously horrible. But there is something to say about the knock-on effect of being in that proximity, or for example, this is like a really random parallel, but say someone who went to war and came back
mhm,
and survived, and then the impact that that has on the veterans' children. Like there's these almost indirect and non-physical effects of trauma on people that often goes overlooked, but it can have a really big effect on people, right?
yeah, yeah, it can. They're hard to they're hard to get into words because it's easy to see something that's physical or something, if I had watched someone die in front of me, that would have been a different story. That's something very easy to point at
Yeah.
versus these other pieces are hard to understand where are these feelings coming from? What is this knock-on effect creating? And yeah, completely.
And I read that you said you returned home with a stronger faith. How come?
Oh gosh, yeah. It was the people coming together, I think,
Mm,
at the end of the day that really struck me by surprise. It was the human resilience of it all and the kind of it was definitely numb walking around afterwards and the days so after, but the pure resilience and determination, I guess, of the people that were also there that, I don't know, it's gotta restore your faith a little bit in humanity.
yeah, and Are you religious? Was there a lot of, I guess, more faith in religion if you are religious after this event?
Um, I think at the time, yeah, it had some impact. I'm Irish Italian, so I grew up I'm Catholic through and through. I think I go through phases where I would call myself more religious than others, and I think at that point in time, it definitely had a little bit of a bit deeper impact on a religious sense. I would say now it's more spiritual and emotional if I'm looking at who I am now. But yeah, it was an interesting time.
And where are you in regards to your faith and God right now compared to back then, and how does that link to your work in technology and AI? Do they conflict, or are they two separate things, or are they interlinked?
Yeah. Gosh. Okay. You're asking all the hard questions here. So I without going too deep into theory of my into my theories on God and religion and everything, I still have some form of a faith. I don't know if I would say that I specifically follow the Catholic Church. I would say traditional wise, I am Catholic by tradition. It's it's the rites of passage, it's the rituals that I've grown up with in my life, and those still matter quite a lot to me. Do I follow the doctrine of the Catholic Church? Probably not. I'm probably a very bad Catholic, but I can appreciate what it brings. I can appreciate religious structure. I think in terms of faith wise, I nowadays, at least my work on the ethics side, um, oh, wow. Okay, this is actually a very interesting question. On the ethics side, I focus quite a lot on where values come from and how they work and why they matter and what the source is, and they're kind of invisible forces that play on our lives. And a lot of it connects back into the central value of love and where that comes from and how powerful of a value that can be. So I think a lot of my faith is tied towards trying to understand what that love is,
Mm,
whether that is a God, whether that is a universal truth, what have you. I am still I do still have a faith that there is something beyond just what we're seeing in our day to day. I think
mm,
from the technology side, this impacts my work in the sense that I see AI as a very fascinating technology, but it captures maybe a fraction of the human experience. It captures maybe a fraction of what we are. And I'm not afraid to have that respect for the uncertain and the mystical. It's kind of like, not to compare myself to Einstein here, but there's that I can't remember exactly how the quote goes, but Einstein talks about how the more he dove into physics, the more he learned, the more he believed in God. And I think it's similar in that sense of the more I learn, the more I dig into ethics and the more with the parallel with artificial intelligence, the more I can't help but shake. There's something there, God, love, whatever be it, there's something there.
yes, some higher thing that we can't pretend right now, at least, comprehend. And what are your thoughts on the people that talk about the singularity or ASI or AGI in almost like godlike terms, like we're creating God? How does that sit with you?
Okay. I'm gonna speak brutally honest here. I'm really sad for them. And I know that sounds patronizing, and it probably is a little bit, but eh, people that are talking about here's the singularity's coming, we have AGI, it's godlike. To me, it's not an indicator of higher intellect or the ability to say, "Oh, I know a lot and I can see into the future." To me, it's an indicator that they haven't really experienced enough of life, that they're missing the joy and awe of the mysterious bits of life that don't quite make sense. And there's so much peace there. There's so much to be had in those kind of funny in-betweens and that respect for your humanity. I think one of the most beautiful things about being human is how messy we can get.
Hmm.
And that's where I think there's all of this I'm at a loss for words here right now, but awe and joy can be found. So the people that are talking about AGI and creating a godlike, to me, I'm like, well, have you actually experienced that sense of awe? Have you experienced that feeling, that rush that you can't get into words? Because if you haven't, then I feel, and that's why you feel like we're creating something godlike because we've created a technology that kind of mirrors us. Then if anything, I feel pity. That's a beautiful feeling. That's a beautiful experience to have.
Mm. So do you think it's they're forgetting about that higher tier, I guess, experiences we can have of maybe enlightenment, whatever that means for the individual, and they're thinking more in the sense that, oh, we're creating something that potentially will be able to know everything, and if it knows everything and can create information and discover information by itself, that's what they're defining as God. Do you think there's just like a mismatch between what God actually probably is, or a higher being actually is, and what they're defining it as?
Yeah, I would say so because eh, we're limited to what we can translate into a digital context. AI is limited by what we can translate into a digital context. And I don't know about you, but there are moments in this life that I can't even get into words, let alone into data points. And those are just as valid, and if not the most important and monumental moments in life. And so those ones, if we can't get that into a digital format, then you better believe that AGI is not going to AGI, and I'm going to put that in quotes, would even be able to touch it. So, and those moments, yeah, I think there's a bit of a mismatch there.
Mm. Yeah, and speaking of quotes, AGI, what are your thoughts on that entire idea of the singularity in AGI and artificial superintelligence? What do you think, from just your own personal opinion, what do you think the future of AI actually looks like? Is it as dramatic as we make it out to be, or do you think it's going to just stagnate at some point, like most technologies do, and it just becomes iterative instead of innovative, like we were mentioning earlier?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we're in for a couple more plot twists at least.
Yeah.
I remember doing the thought experiments around singularity, especially in my time at Edinburgh. In my time in Edinburgh, there were a lot of thought experiments, and I remember sitting there going, "Hold on, the whole theory around singularity is that we humans will create an AI that is smarter than us, and then that AI will be driven to create an AI smarter than it, and then we'll hit super intelligence, or like so on until we hit super intelligence." And I was sitting there, I was like, okay, because how it's always presented is this: these are just natural, not natural. They are unavoidable. This is going to
Mm.
happen. This is
Yeah.
steps happens in. I was always like, well, hold on. Let's say we create an AI that's smarter than us. Great. Who's to say that that AI, because it's smarter than us, doesn't look at us and go, you idiots, I'm not creating something smarter than me. That's not, that's a really bad
Yeah.
idea. And then the whole thing would stop. So I don't know, that's more of a side joke. But the whole singularity, I think we're in for a couple more, at least a couple more plot twists around AI. I don't think it's going to be. I think what's going to be dramatic are the people behind it, not the technology itself. We're going to see some cool developments, but how they're used, that's more on the people. That's not anything to do with the AI taking over itself in the world.
Mm, yeah, technology, I like the definition it is as being a new and better way of doing something, but it has to be done by someone, right? Especially at least for now. I mean, you can have AI agents and stuff, which I don't know a lot about, but they sound really cool. But it still seems that someone has to, with a brain, has to be thinking, okay, I want to use this new technology as a tool
Yeah.
and get something out of it and make it easier for me to do something. Do you think it's going to remain that, in the sense that we're still, I guess, controlling it or using it for our own advantage, rather than it being its own agentic, almost conscious thing?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I keep asking, like, we created AI to have some impact on us. So at some point in this whole equation, we need to be involved in it.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't make sense to me to try and create an AI that what exists on it in its own bubble on itself. The whole purpose of it and why we keep putting resources behind it is so that we can have human impact. And until that day happens where we can say, no, it's okay, we don't need human impact, we can just let AI do its thing, we are always going to have to account for the human. There's always going to have to be a person involved. And frankly, I mean, we're years away from being able to go hands off, and agentic AI in theory is very, very cool, but in practice we're still pretty far from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've mentioned it a couple times already, but you are an AI ethicist. What does that actually mean for those who are uncertain about that term? And what is ethics as a whole field in
Yeah.
general?
Let me try and let me try a new way of explaining this. Why not? Um, so we have with artificial intelligence, it's mirrored after how our brains logically think through things, right? Mirrored loosely. So we're looking at analytical logic at the end of the day. We're not necessarily accounting for different pieces like emotional intelligence or spatial intelligence. These are things that we as humans, we have multiple different types of intelligences. One of those intelligences is specifically around ethics. And ethics looks at our values. It looks it's for me it's like a science, which is how I find it really quite interesting, and maybe I'm a little bit different than a lot of ethicists out there, but I see it as a science because I'm looking at how these values are forces on our lives, how they shape how we make our decisions, how we take actions, whether or not we are cognizant of it. Our values drive a lot of that decision making. And ethics is the study, the science of understanding, first of all, what values are at play here, but then second of all, how they're impacting that decision making. So it's much like physics. We're studying the forces of nature and how the forces of nature impact us physically. Ethics is the study of how values impact us at the end of the day. And that's
Mm.
so to bring it back around to AI ethics, an AI ethicist is someone that is studying and understanding what values are at play here within this technology and the use case and the end user and the whole picture. What values do we need to work with? And how do we align key decisions around the development of that technology with the specific values that we want to either have the end user experience or be embedded into the system itself?
So what are the current values in AI and how have they changed over the last decade or half decade?
So the interesting thing about the I'm going to call them the AI values or the AI virtues here for a second. And this will make sense as I go. The AI virtues. I'm a virtue ethicist, by the way, which I can explain I can also explain.
Yeah,
But
please do.
okay, quick. Virtue ethics is someone that looks at the virtue versus vice, and so virtues sit on a spectrum. It's a little bit different from deontological and utilitarian, which are typical. eh, those two frameworks, those two ethics frameworks, are the ones that technologists usually lean towards. Deontological means you're following rules, so that's like um, what's that? What's the set of those three robot rules of like don't harm a human? Um, and I'm forgetting the other two right now. That's deontological, where you're given a set of rules and you follow those
Yeah.
rules. Those are your values and your ethics. Um, Consequential means you're looking at the outcomes. So, doing the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people is usually the line of thought that goes there. These are much easier to hard code for, and they're a little bit easier to comprehend in the world of AI. Virtue ethics, specifically for me, is I know I'm way off your question now, but virtue ethics is when you are looking at virtues, values as a habit. So something that you learn over time. It's kind of like a muscle that you build up. And you are looking for the right action for the right person at the right time. So it takes into account all of the context that you have to sit in. It's not a blanket statement of right and wrong. And it looks at balancing between what works for you in that moment. So, like courage, take the value of courage. Too much courage, and you're rash, or like trying to charge a lion for no reason. That's
Yeah.
not too little courage in any given scenario, and you're seen as a coward, and that's not good. So you're trying to find the right balance. So it's like finding a golden mean. Um, very very off topic there. That's why I use the term virtues quite often because I come from the school of thought of a virtue ethicist. God, okay, that was a ramble. Um, AI virtues themselves are these values, these virtues that we see, and they're going to sound like buzzwords when I say them, but transparency, explainability, fairness, privacy, these are all AI virtues in the sense that these are features or aspects of something that we want the AI to have. Now, if I put it this way, I'm not going to say, Jacob, I want you to be private. Like, I'm really glad that you have privacy, or I'm really glad that you have transparency. No, I'm going to look at an AI system and say, like, great, there's privacy is embedded, and transparency has been embedded, and this is a good system. So those AI virtues, the ones that we know we want our technology to have, those haven't really changed, if I'm being honest. They more or less got set down into place um probably about 5, 6 years ago. They really started to solidify. And since then, most policies touch on these. They have reference points to these. Every so often, we have a new version. We have like an update to it of that this is our new understanding of fairness, or this is our new understanding of privacy. Um, but those AI virtues, those are pretty much becoming industry standard of what an AI needs to, the standards that an AI needs to meet. I'm stressing that those are AI virtues. And I started to give you an example there, like you, Jacob, I don't care. It feels weird to describe you of like, good job, Jacob, you're private, or you're transparent, you're explainable. That just sounds weird. But I would tell you, like, Jacob, I value that you are honest, and you are forthcoming, and you are loyal, or like these are very human virtues, and these are human aspects. Those have been shifting and changing how we want to create and craft um, the values that we have as humans when we're using AI. That is in continuous flux. We're just now starting to understand and pay attention to it. And that's what gets me excited as an ethicist now in this whole equation. And I'm going to stop there before I keep going further, because I feel like I have really, really gone off the rocker on this.
No, it's a good introduction. And if the values have been there for since 5 or 6 years, then what was the reason you founded Ethical Intelligence, and what does it aim to solve that hasn't been solved before you started the company?
Oof. So EI is almost 7 years old, which is wild to say. But EI, ethical intelligence for short. When I first founded the company, there really there were a lot of questions around ethics. There were a lot of questions around responsible AI. AI ethics and responsible AI are within the same field, but they're different practices. And we can go into that if you want later. But back then, when I was founding the company, I was faced with companies having these questions like, what does it mean? What should I be doing? How does this look? What is good and bad? What is it? How do I make sure that I'm not stepping on in the wrong direction with AI and technology in general? So I founded the company back then to help answer these questions. And through its life cycle, it's been through so many different life cycles at this point. We primarily focused we were primarily focused as a consultancy for a very, very long time. Now we're in the midst of actually getting a whole new facelift, as I'm calling it. And we're focusing on training and education going forward. There's a lot of decisions that went behind that, but the primary piece being there is a lack of very concrete fundamental training in AI, ethics, responsible AI across the board for people in a way that it's not salesy. It's for non-technical people that you don't need to code to be able to understand this. So trying to break those down, really looking at humans are the change factor. Humans are the make or break point in this whole AI game. And right now, the humans aren't we're missing a lot of skill sets to be able to make those decisions. So going forward, ethical intelligence we've got a whole community, but we're focusing on that training and education, because that's really what's missing in the market right now.
And what are like the negative consequences of there not being that training right now that you guys hope to fill out? and resolve?
Well, it's a lot of fear, I would say, in the current day. A lot of fear and a lot of wasted time and resources. Everyone's being pitched AI left, right, and center. Well, how do you actually understand if you need that AI solution and what would you need it for? And is that vendor that's pitching it to you, is that a good match? And so on. Or is this a good project? How do we understand the use case? There's all of these different factors that can lead to a lot of wasted time and resources if the decision makers are not informed about what actually goes into AI, what it takes to successfully bring it to market or bring it within your teams, how to do it in a way that doesn't compromise your company mission, your values, the society, the industry values that you're operating in. All of this is really a key point that comes back to that education. It's like AI is a new language that we all need to know how to speak. Unless we all know how to speak it, we're just going to end up in confusion and spinning spinning our wheels trying to hope that someone can understand us as we're moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. So it makes it. It's good that it's also not just for people who know how to code and stuff. It's just for the person that might actually be being sold the AI product. I think that's a really good step in the right direction, because I feel like there could be a lot of maybe scams or issues, or even just like people buying an AI product that they think is going to be helpful because someone uses loads of jargon on a sales call, and then they end up not being useful for their business at all. So is that what you guys are trying to solve in a way? Is trying to make people literate about where, and make them able to decipher whether they need these products or need to use AI in their businesses or not? Is that the only thing you guys are targeting, or are you also targeting other scenarios and problems too?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the scenarios. Other scenarios are, let's say you want to use AI or trying to become an AI enabled company or just an individual, but you have no idea what the capacity is. What are the capabilities? That's something that through this education, it's understanding of where are the limitations of AI and where are the true opportunities, not the sales pitches, but the actual true opportunities of where this can work, and being able to suss that out. That's really the first line of attack that we're on right now, but it'll expand as we continue on. I mean, there's so many different avenues that we can go, and there's so many different questions. It's um really just kind of looking at what does the human at the end of the day need to know so that they can get the most out of the technology, not ChatGPT prompts, but hey, how do LLMs actually work, and where can I stretch this versus where does this break? Those are more the fundamental questions that we're trying to answer.
Yeah, and what does this actually look like as a product or service for you guys? What are you actually providing, and
Yeah.
how does it look like?
So we've got actually it's great timing for a conversation. We've got our first of our online courses are coming out tomorrow. So
Nice.
this is quite literally called AI literacy for non-technical professionals. It's the fundamentals on AI. Literally, it's this course was very fun to build because I'm a philosopher. I never disguise that, but I work in very technical settings, and I get asked all the time, like, "Where did you learn AI? How do you know this? Where, how does this happen?" And so I bundled up that whole knowledge base and I put it into a course. Like this is more or less the information that I operate on. And I'm in boardrooms and I'm in the cubicles. I am all up and down an entire company chain talking with people about this. And this is the information that serves me to be able to have those kind of conversations. So that's the first course coming out. We're gonna have more online courses coming out, and then we also deliver workshops, hands-on workshops. And from there, honestly, it's going to grow. But these are the first formats that we're working in. Um, and I'm excited to see actually where this next step goes.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Really, really excited to check it out, and I'll obviously leave it in the show notes because this will be posted in a few weeks. So check this
Yeah,
out. Check that out at the end of the episode, guys. But
this is
what are
right in
some?
the
Yeah, what are some examples of AI like causing harm, and ethical AI or AI ethics potentially trying to solve it or reduce the harm it's caused?
Hmm. I think. The Jacob, I'm going to be honest with you. This question, I find it's been answered so many times, and we have the same examples that we give it every single time of like the Amazon hiring software bot that was sexist. I think it was sexist. Yeah. It's like sexist or racist. It's one of the two. Like, I'm not discrediting this, but we hear these stories over and over again of like right now we've got the very, very unfortunate lawsuits against OpenAI for the suicides that ChatGPT has played a role in. We've got examples of um, the we have Cambridge Analytica. We have like there's so many of these cases that I feel like we've heard them so many times now, and
Yeah.
it almost becomes this like oof. Um, it creates a lot of fear around AI. But then again, at the same time, these are edge cases. They're not the norm
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah.
God, they're not the norm. Um, but what people need to understand is in a lot of these cases, yes, there are times where someone has made an active decision that has led to that harmful technology. But most of the time, what happens is someone has an idea that was good at the start and had good intentions at the start, and then little by little, over multiple iterations, they get
Mm.
further and further away from that, and then they end up with these different kind of systems, or they just didn't check, or they didn't do enough research, they didn't do enough testing, and these kinds of things where ethics comes in or where responsible AI comes in is just asking those questions, making sure that we're staying aligned with those good intentions. It's not that
Yeah.
there are necessarily bad people building. It's more this is very complex technology to build. You need someone that kind of sits there. You need someone that sits like the conscience, Finding Nemo. You've got Dory going, I'm your conscience. You need someone that sits there and goes, all right, this we're getting too far. Like we need to come back towards what the core was. Um, I know that's not necessarily a direct answer, but I think I kind of want to cut through some of those misconceptions. Yes, we have these existential questions that we are faced around AI and the ethics of it. And there's a lot of people at work there, but really the day-to-day ones that people are concerned about, it's more about making sure that there is someone in the room that's remembering to ask, hey, did we think about it from this perspective? Did we take
Mm.
into account this experience or this idea? Um,
Mm.
and that these aren't bad people. That's I think, yeah, kind of the misconception I want to cut through.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's really good, really helpful, Olivia. And is it more prevention rather than cure then? So the preventative questions, asking those questions so it doesn't happen, not asking the questions after it happens.
Exactly. Because if you catch them before, then I mean, the amount of time and money saved, if you want to
Yeah.
talk business, the amount of time and money, but also just it it reduces that tension that exists within teams. It creates a better product at the end of the day. Like there's so many knock-on benefits that come from it that when you look at it that way, you're going, well, of course we want to catch these preemptively. We don't want to go back and try and fix them.
Mm, yeah. And you said another common misconception is all the ethics problems only exist in the technology. If that's the case, if they only, yeah, the misconception is they only exist in the technology, but
Mm.
what other places do the ethics problems lie then?
In the user interface, in the use case, how people are engaging with the technology, like okay, let's take the very unfortunate example from OpenAI. OpenAI did not set out to design a technology that would help convince teenagers to commit suicide. There is no way someone sat in a in a room and said, "Yeah, that works. That'll be fine." It's how the technology was used at the end of the day that started to lead in that direction, the capacity that it could lead in that direction. We didn't have to have these overarching models released to the general public and then have them more um let's say, friendly and convincing. Like these are feature decisions that weren't necessarily thought all the way through from start to finish of what could be the knock-on effects from them. So those are have nothing to do with the LLM, nothing to do with how from a technical perspective generative AI and large language models work. It has everything to do with design feature choices of, well, can we make the chat sound can we make the can we make ChatGPT sound more friendly? Can we make it more affirming? Can we like those are design choices that went into that. There are choices. I mean, it could not have been made available to the general public. That's a use case decision that went into that. Unfortunately, parents and schools alike have been thrown into the deep end of trying to figure out how to teach their children what is a good relationship with this technology, and they were left off with in the deep end without any sort of guidance. So that's a
Mm.
human aspect there of teaching the next generation of what does a healthy relationship look like with ChatGPT, for example. Like if ChatGPT starts saying these kinds of things, come talk to me. They didn't know that that's what they had to be teaching their kids. And these have nothing to do with lines of code and everything to do with design and human decisions.
Mm. Is this just, I don't want to say inevitable, but very likely when it's a new innovation, a new technology, it's fresh to the general public. I think Cornelius Vanderbilt, this is really random, but trust me, it will make sense. Cornelius Vanderbilt, I think he used steamships to transport people from the East Coast to the West Coast through various different routes down across South America, like basically create a business. But I think back then, before he switched to the railroads, which he got a lot of success from, I think he ended up having like 5% of global wealth at one point. It was crazy. He made a crazy amount of money from it. But anyway, at one point the steamships were quite new technology, so they just kept like blowing up, which was obviously super unfortunate. Same with the aeroplanes, the 1920s until the 1950s or 60s. If you look at a graph of the number of casualties per million or billion miles, it's very, very high. And then once more regulations get put in, it just drops to like one casualty per billion miles of passenger. So
Yeah.
is this a parallel with AI? Because it's such a new and fresh, innovative technology. It's really the frontier of innovation right now.
Yeah.
Is there just not a lot of regulation going on because it's so new? And what you guys are doing is asking the right questions and now making sure that there's more preventative measures and regulations that get put in, so things like the ChatGPT suicide, I guess, horrific events stop
Yeah.
happening.
I think there's some parallel to be drawn here, definitely, of the fact that this is a new technology. We're figuring it out as we go. If anyone claims they understand AI completely, that is the biggest lie I've ever heard. But I think the difference here between the case of what we're facing right now, mainly with the foundational models, with these frontier models versus, say, the steamboat and the airplane that you're talking about, we don't really have necessarily an option to not engage. So
Mm,
the people that you can make all sorts of arguments, but it wasn't everyone in general is being forced onto a steamboat or everyone in general is being forced on an airplane. The people that were willing to take those larger risks for whatever reasons were taking those larger risks knowingly. They
yeah.
knew there was, okay, this can explode, okay, um, and so on. Versus with AI right now, it's everywhere. You can't
Yeah.
avoid it, um, even if you want to. Like, you can't even sit yourself in a little bubble. It's being forced onto everyone everywhere all at once, and I think that's the difference because it's you almost it's very hard to opt out of it now. It's very
Yeah.
hard to say, "No, I'm not going to." And so you're not necessarily given that active choice of, "Yes, I'm willing I understand these risks I'm taking and I'm willing to take them." we're still figuring out what those risks are, and you're not necessarily allowed to choose whether or not you're going to take them, or the people around you or so on. It's so interconnected.
Yeah, no, that's a really good insight. And I guess point to add is like it's not a niche thing that only a certain amount of people can try. It's literally everywhere, especially because all of us have smartphones and computers, which are all have AI on it now. You can't really opt out. It's not like cookies. You can't just like opt out of it. It is here. So what do we do then? Do we just now be strict and make sure the virtuous ethics are indeed virtuous and put real action into implementing them rather than just pretending? Because I was going to ask you about that. I was like, do
Yeah.
you think a lot of these AI companies, from your experience talking to them, how much of them are like, yeah, we really need to take action, change things with the way it's being run, versus people who are like, yeah, let's just pretend that we're doing this so we can appear all virtuous with a virtue signaling kind of idea? Because I remember there was a term which people probably still use, environmentalists use, like greenwashing, where like companies will
Yep.
pretend they have such good environmental policies, but in reality, they're just doing that to get you to buy their stuff and they're not actually implementing it. What does it look like in the AI sphere right now in terms of people actually changing things for the better?
We had a term called blue washing, and that was all around ethics washing. So yes, I do remember that. Um, this is actually probably a good point for me to explain real quick the difference between AI ethics and responsible AI. So AI ethics is all about values, and we're trying to understand how how AI either reflects or conflicts with those values. Versus responsible AI is like being a responsible adult. You are doing what needs to be done in order for AI to be built successfully. We call it responsible AI because actually, that's a great question. Someone coined the term at some point. They're like, yeah, I like that. It's responsible. Really, at the end of the day, it's just good business practice. It's how to build AI in a way that can scale and a way that mitigates the risks that come with it. It's not necessarily looking at the specific questions around different values. And why this ties into your question, I rarely see a company deny the importance of responsible AI. They're all attempting it in some way. Sometimes it's not called responsible AI. Actually, most of the time it's called AI governance now. Um, there are different practices in there. Something as simple as like model documentation. That's a responsible AI practice that 3 years ago, oh my God, don't talk about model documentation. And now it's like, well, you're not documenting. So it's changed, as the industry evolves.
Hmm.
But most companies have some attempt at responsible AI practices. They're trying because they do make a difference. They do actually help companies scale, well, just adopt AI and use AI in general, but then scale it as well. Um, when it comes to the ethics questions, we did have the blue washing for a while, where companies were like, "Oh yeah, we've got the our ethics principles," and then no one really does anything with them.
Yeah.
I think time and time again, there are lists of principles where just not necessarily everything's happening with it, but it's moved to such a forefront of the conversation that you're going to be hard pressed to find someone that this doesn't at least sit in the back of their mind and they have questions about. Um, so it's the industry's changed a lot since I first
Hmm.
started in it. Is probably the best summary.
Yeah, and is that just also the natural process of these companies maturing, or mature companies implementing AI and creating AI products? Because I guess at the start it was like with OpenAI, just startups, minimum viable products, just get something out there and iterate and create new things. Whereas now they have more money, they have more users, they have more employees. Is this kind of like a natural bureaucratic process which is accelerated by responsible AI and AI ethics?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, there's a lot of different factors that have put pressure there. I would add in the last one of the general public kind of pressure where
Yeah,
it so one of the interesting things growing up in the Silicon Valley, we were the guinea pigs. So
yeah,
when OpenAI released ChatGPT onto the world, that was nothing new for me. I've been a guinea pig since I was born. But then all of a sudden, the entire world was a guinea pig trying to figure out what this was, and that was an interesting shift. But since that release, it was a pivotal moment for lots of reasons. But one of those pivotal moments was all of a sudden AI became very real to the everyday person, and these conversations around and these questions around ethics and what we were doing and what where we were headed, all of a sudden everyone was now a part of that conversation. And so I would say these companies have also had that pressure coming up from the markets as well.
Yeah, you mentioned you were guinea pigs. How long before it was released to the public did you have access to ChatGPT, OpenAI, and all the things to do with the AI?
I didn't actually. I didn't. I am sure I could go ask some friends in San Francisco and they would tell me, like a couple months in advance. Or I have a couple buddies that work at OpenAI that were probably they saw it for a long time to come before, but it used to be something like a ChatGPT would be released into, say, just the Valley ecosystem.
Yeah.
Then it would expand out of it if it was successful there. But it wasn't. They skipped that step. They didn't go just for the Valley. They went global from day one in that release.
How come? Is it just because they knew how valuable and useful it would be to everyone?
I don't know. I honestly I wonder that. It was a very bold decision. I think it was a very bold marketing decision,
Mm,
honestly, at the end of the day, that they went, huh, let's try something a little bit different that we haven't seen other AI companies do. Um, let's see. That
mm,
that really could have been just the only decision factor that went there if we got to stand out or we want to make a splash. I don't think they fully thought through what they were doing. Granted, I was not behind the scenes, but I don't think they fully thought through outside of the bubble of the Silicon Valley what they were releasing and what
mm,
that meant.
mm. Yeah, they really put the genie out the bottle in a way,
But
and just we're living with the consequences both positively and negatively. I think it is overall net positive by far. What are
yeah,
your views on that? There's so many doomers and gloomers, but also very techno optimists. Where do you stand on that spectrum?
I will forever be an optimist at the end of the day. I think that I'm either naive or stubborn, probably a combination of both, but I will forever be an optimist. I think, I've seen enough of humanity to believe in it. When it comes to ChatGPT and the following and the frontier models that followed, I think, oof, I don't know actually yet. There's so many different aspects here because on one hand, I'm looking at it going, yeah, there's definitely a net positive. We were introduced at such at such an intensity to AI being a part of our lives and forcing that next question of what does this look like and people getting to experiment. And I've heard amazing stories. Ma- You're gonna laugh, primarily from Uber drivers. For some reason, whenever I take an Uber, I'm always it comes up if they're chatty and we're driving around and um, it comes up I'm an AI ethicist. Uber drivers have a lot of really cool ways that they have used ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and so on. So I hear those stories about people that are taking on life differently because of this technology. And so I see that and I think, wow, okay, that's amazing. At the same time, I see the costs of human life, of natural resources, of critical thought in some cases. So I also see the cost. So I think it might be too early to tell. I don't think it's a step that would have been avoided though. Like I think
Mm,
this step would have happened if even if ChatGPT had never come about. It might have happened. It might have been dressed up in very different clothes, but we were headed in this direction no matter what. So I And I don't know if that's net positive or net negative. It might just be a neutral of, all right, this is
yeah.
the next phase of what we're headed through, headed towards.
Mm, yeah, yeah. And in your TED talk, you mentioned about how tech companies sometimes take advantage of us. They sell our data to companies. That was an example that you used. And if we are innately moral creatures, and why do you think the tech companies run by humans
Yeah.
are have taken advantage of us in the past and maybe are continuing to do so?
It's all, there's lots of different reasons. I think one of them is the competition side definitely drives a lot of decision making where profit is the only way of evaluating success. I think we're getting close to that cracking. Something needs to change there where it's not only profit, but we're looking at uh, people as well. We're looking at principle. Like there needs to be some type of balance out there because the decisions that come when you're just looking at profit, it's always short-term profit that you gain, but long-term really screwing things up. So I think it's too short-sighted to only make decisions off of short-term profit. So I think there's just some in some ways those decisions get driven there. I think in other ways those decisions get driven are done because like I was saying, it's not that there are bad people in there making these conscious decisions. I'm sure that the idea of, hey, we can sell the like you're wearing a Fitbit or you're wearing a health tracker, and we can sell that data to insurance companies. Well, that means that insurance can be more personalized to the person. There's always a good angle that things can
Yeah.
be sold here, and usually what happens is someone sees that good intention and they forget to look at the peripherals. They forget that there's higher misuse cases rather than just the good intention one. So I think as well, those decisions get made out of good intentions even, which I know sometimes is hard for people to grapple with.
Hmm. Yeah. So, how do we avoid that? Is it again having the person in the room asking the ethical question? What are some direct ways that this can stop happening or be reduced?
Yeah. Having the person in the room is definitely helpful. So having an ethicists are trained to ask these questions. We're the ones that are poking things in all directions. We're trying to see from multiple different angles. We do something called in the world of philosophy, it's called moral imagination, where you take a scenario and then you imagine different outcomes. And it's called moral imagination because what you're trying to do is understand what are the possible outcomes based off of different value decisions. So ethicists, that's what we're doing. We're running through all of these different directions that a path can take and analyzing, hey, which
Mm.
is the direction that is both going to get that profit, but also respects our end users at the end of the day. So long term, we have that loyalty and keeps the human dignity at the center of it. So on and on. One way is, having a trained ethicist. Another way is training and education. So these are questions that they're not foreign to us, but we're not necessarily taught. They're not It's not like a habit that we have built. It's not taught in our day-to-day. It's not necessarily reinforced in our workplace, but if we're taught and that's reinforced, then those questions naturally surface and you're naturally sitting there going, "Right. I now see it from this direction and hold on, let me do a little bit more digging," or um so those that's why I have such a passion and focus now on that training and education side is there's just a lot of lack of it that
Mm.
if we had it would lead to more informed decision making and better questions being asked.
Yeah. So, is the course helping us become the person in the room that then asks the question? Is that a big theme behind the course? Is that training you to become the person who's in the corner, like, wait, actually, and then ask the question that needs to be answered and maybe thought
Right.
about?
That'll definitely be future courses. This current course, the first one being released, is really just on the fundamentals of AI. So, like, Jacob, I don't know how technical your background is, but if I were to sit down and talk to, say, this is going to be a very generic one, generic CEO of generic mid Fortune 500, something like that. If I were to sit down and say to this person, we're looking at an unstructured data set that we're going to have to build our NLP model off of our outputs. We do want speech to text. Like I'm starting to use all these jargon points, right? That makes sense. That is like all of those pieces. You, if you have that fundamental knowledge, you know what I'm talking about there.
Mm.
that CEO is going to have no idea what I just said. Absolutely
Mm.
no idea. But those
I
are
think I'm
key
the CEO.
exactly, like, those key decisions, like, that person's not gonna be able to make any key decisions off of that statement.
Mm,
So, what this course looks at doing is breaking down that, like, what is data at the end of the day? When I'm talking about structured versus unstructured data, which is a very big difference and something incredibly important to know, both in terms of your AI feasibility, but also how well an AI is going to perform, like, you need to know that. And you
mm,
don't need a technical degree to understand the difference between structured and unstructured. It's very simple, but no one took the time to sit down and translate that into plain language where anyone can understand it. So that's really what this first course is focused on. It's AI literacy. It's teaching a new language at the end of the day
mm.
so that you don't need the technical background, but you can still lead those conversations. You still know what questions to ask. You still know you can you can decode what I just said even.
Yeah, yeah. And so what would you say to a CEO who's just like, I'll just outsource it. I'll outsource it to CTO. He knows about technology. Like, what would you say to that CEO who's being a bit stubborn?
Well, I mean, sure you can outsource this to your CTO, but do you know what your CTO is saying at the end of the day? Like, you need to work with your CTO. You make your
Yeah.
decisions based off of the information your CTO brings you, and if you still don't know what your CTO is saying, then you still can't make the decisions that you're being paid to make.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. And how are you going to be targeting the people? Is it going to be CEOs at first at the mid Fortune 500 companies? Like, what's the marketing going to be like for the course?
Yeah, so it's accessible for individual purpose, individual purchase, but our main target is actually through companies. We're actually targeting teams within companies. So specifically, let's say like HR teams, executive suites, marketing teams, the teams that aren't traditionally necessarily technically literate. This isn't
Yeah.
a course built for engineers or computer scientists or your data scientists. It's built for everyone else. We've already delivered it with a couple different boards, and the increase that we've seen in literacy has even taken me by surprise. And the exciting part to that is seeing someone sit there and go like, "Wait a second, that's what AI is?" I'm like, yeah, this
Mm.
isn't a secret. And then they go, "Oh." And then they start sitting there. I can see them working through all of these different scenarios where they were sitting there going, eh, one of the big challenges, I'll say from the executive side, I know I'm getting off topic again, but I'll keep this one short. One of the challenges on the executive side when it comes to AI is executives are the people that need to know what's happening. They're the
Yeah.
ones that are assumed to know when they're in the room. They don't know AI, but they're
Mm.
afraid to ask.
Yeah.
So if they're afraid to ask, how are they supposed to be able to understand what's happening and make any key decisions? So it's that sense of like you need to know what you're talking about. Um, you don't have to sit with that fear and that confusion. And AI is not going to take over. You're actually still very much in control. And here's one way to get back into that control and that confidence that you need to be able to make these key decisions in a very kind of chaotic future and market we're in right now.
Mm. Yeah. And I guess if you did advise or target CEOs, not just like teams, then maybe the CEOs who go through the course realize how valuable it is, would then tell the rest of their teams and the rest of their company to do it as well. And it will almost be like a network effect, and more people will absorb the course and learn from it.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's I'm excited to have it out finally. It's taken it's taken not forever. We put a lot of time and care into it. So I'm excited to see that all come together. And then in this next year it's so many people, so many different people need this information. I'm really excited to see the different channels that we end up solidifying through the
Mm.
process of understanding, we've got a couple of routes to market, but which ones of those prove to be the strongest? I'm really excited to find out.
Mm. Yeah. And do you think you'll write another book about this topic or a similar topic?
I'm actually already working on the next book. So,
Nice. Nice.
yes, it's not on the topic necessarily of, well, it kind of touches on AI literacy a little bit, but it's yeah, it's already in the works.
Is the general topic a secret? If you come up with a title that you'd like to share, or are you going to keep it in the closet?
No, I can share it. I can share it. So I call it the working title because it is still
Yeah.
in the works. But working title is not every solution has a problem. And
Mm.
it is, think of it as like how to AI meets self-help, which I know sounds a little bit funny, but it's off of this concept of AI as a part of our future, whether we want it to be or not. So how are we going to approach that? And right now, the blanket approach is I have an AI solution. Let me figure out what problem fits to it, or like, let me just make more solutions. And that is just leading to this unending cycle of just more solutions of a bubble that needs to pop versus it's more important now in this current day to understand the problem that you want solved rather than have 15 different AI solutions that might solve something.
Mm. Yeah. So it's almost like reversing it and
Yeah.
thinking of the problem first. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's a little like counterintuitive, but I
Yeah.
got a couple fun ways that I'm approaching it. And I guess keep an eye on my channels in the new year. It'll be very fun. This writing process I'm taking very different from my first book. My first book I was very secretive about the fact that I was writing. The people in my close circle, my network knew I was writing this book, but I was so nervous to say come out and say that I was writing that I really didn't talk about it until I'd handed in the manuscript essentially,
Mm.
and then
How
it felt
come?
real. It it I was just worried that it wasn't real for some reason, I guess. Despite the fact that I wrote 85,000 words and I spent 5 months just writing this book.
Mm.
It I didn't wanna jinx it, I guess, which
Uh,
sounds funny. I was under contract. I my publisher was publishing this book. It wasn't there was no question that this book was gonna come out or not, but, I think because it was the first book, it was just that awe of, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe that this is happening," and so I really didn't involve I involved some very close collaborators with me, but it wasn't something that I was necessarily open that I was writing it. This next book, when I was saying watch my channels is I am taking everyone along the ride with me as I write it. So it's a very different approach as well. Um,
yeah.
to what I've done before.
How come you have changed the approach then? And what are the results of that looking like for you now in terms of the feedback, the motivation, and the whole writing process in general by sharing the journey with everyone?
It's well, I'm really starting it in January. That'll be heavy handing. But like right now, the fact that I even told you what this next book is about is definitely reflective of the fact that I'm much more forthcoming this time
Yeah.
around, and I'm getting excited. I'm pulling people and I'm telling them go watch my channels. This is I'm starting part 2 of the book is all based off of interviews, so it'll make more sense in the new year. But I think I won't lie. One reason was a very strategic decision. Makes great marketing for the book,
Yeah.
and
I was going to
at
say
the end of the day,
that.
it's a product, and so you gotta raise awareness around it. But I think it's a strategic decision that way. But honestly, the biggest motivator for me was it's how I get feedback and it's how I get excitement and energy is by bringing people into this world that I am growing and crafting and bringing different perspectives to life, and it's people bringing up different ideas through that process. And what I didn't tell people is I do a lot of professional speaking, and when I was writing that first book I would test a lot of what was going into the book actually on stage. So I
Mm,
wasn't
yeah.
saying that this is what I'm doing, but I would test something. And if the audience resonated with it, then that made it into the book. If it kind of fell flat, then I'm going, okay. Like kind of like a stand-up comedian. I'm testing to see does this work or does this not? Um, and that I think was one of the biggest tools that I used when I wrote the first book. So part of my motivator going into the second one was, well, I know I like that feedback. I know I like that community that gets built up and the ideation that comes from it. I thrive in it. And I want other people to be a part of that discovery with me. It's such a fascinating journey to go on. Why not? Why am I hiding behind the scenes on this? Why can't I open it up and bring other people along with me?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's really cool. And how much pressure do you put on yourself for these projects? You know, what's the inner
Mm,
monologue looking like in Olivia's mind? Because mine fluctuates. It depends on how it's doing, how much of a routine I'm in, and how much progress
yeah.
I'm making. But I'd be curious to know.
I think that inner monologue was a lot was a harsh critic, I think, in my earlier
Uh,
years. Less of a pep talk and more of like a, "Come on, you can do this. You know you can do better. Like, let's keep going." I think over the years it's morphed, it's changed. I still do a lot of pep talk. There's a lot of internal monologue of like, "All right, we got this. We're gonna figure it out." I got a lot of hype playlists that I play for myself.
yeah.
But I think the biggest change that has come, well, just even in the recent year or two, I put a lot of focus on understanding what it means to be human and the importance of that when it comes to developing and building in the world of AI. You know, we're building a technology that's supposed to be reflective of our humanity, so we need to understand our humanity first. And I've done a lot of that kind of self-reflection and exploration around acceptance of the messiness of being human and acceptance that no one's going to operate at 100% every single day. And um, I feel like I had that external facing a lot. Like I was very patient. I'm very patient with people that I work with, and I try and be understanding as much as possible. And I kind of hit the point of, Olivia, if you're looking at accepting the whole spectrum of humanity, the good, bad, the ugly, then you also need to do that for yourself. So on days that
Mm.
I'm off, instead of trying to push through them, instead of saying like, all right, grit your teeth, like get over yourself, that inner monologue has changed to, all right, this is a day. You're gonna take, and I do have days where I scrap everything. Everything goes off my schedule. I drop it and I go, I'm not here right now. And this isn't, I'm not gonna be able to function. And all I'm gonna do is get deeper into this spiral if I try and work. So that monologue has turned into, be kind to yourself. You're also human. Go take the day off, go get a coffee, like do the things that you know help get you back on track. And then tomorrow we'll be back on track instead of tomorrow me having to pep talk again and grit teeth again. So it's changed
Mm.
over the years.
Is that just insight through iteration, through trying to grit your teeth every day and then realizing it's actually better to put your foot off the gas? And is it also because of the momentum you've built? Maybe you've reached some escape velocity and you have more proof that despite those days, you can, you know, crack on 2 days later and not fail. Because I always have this fear in the back of my mind from past experience since I was like 15 and I've wanted to be a wildlife photographer or start this business or do the
Yeah.
podcast. Like there's been times in my life where I've been really hyper focused, hyper fixated on something, and then I'll put my foot off the gas for 2 days, and then I look back 3 months later, and I'm like, oh damn, I've stopped posting on my wildlife pictures on Instagram, and I promised I was going to do it every single day. So now I've started the podcast, which I started in May. I've been really like kind of grit teeth, just do a little bit every single day because I always feel better for it afterwards. But what you're saying is now you've got older, you've not had to do that as much. But what are the reasons for that?
I think one factor that really changed things for me was actually the writing the book, that process, because it was something that I both had to grit teeth over. I wrote it in 5 months. I do not suggest writing a book in 5 months. That
Yeah,
was insane.
intense.
Yeah, that was insane. But there was one point where, you know, I had to grit teeth, but also I had to keep up that stamina. And I noticed that if I was trying to force something on one day, I never liked that writing that came out of that day. and that
Mm.
it made more sense if I left it for the day and came back to it the next day. I would write twice as much, or I would write something far better the next day because I had regained that energy. I'd gotten back into the headspace that I needed to. Um, I think I think it's also been I've had the luxury of being at this for a while. So I've
Yeah.
done a lot of trial and error. And the Olivia that was just grueling, what is it? Nose to the grindstone for years in the early days, I would just push through it constantly. And I was burnt out and tired. And I noticed I never made decisions from a good place. It was always out of fear or like, well, I'm tired and I got to make sure that this happens. And it was good. Like I still had success. I still had forward motion. But when I finally started to focus more on where where does it work? Where does it work for me? When I take care of myself, what happens when I am listening to what my body needs, what my mental health needs, what my emotional stability needs, when I'm listening to what I need, then the work that comes out of that, the quality of it has such a better depth,
Mm.
and my audiences and my work actually respond much better to that.
Yeah.
So I had the positive reinforcement too, and I've been able to slow down enough to listen to that. Like I've had the positive reinforcement that shows when I do take care of myself, I do better work, and that better work actually feeds me both emotionally and across the board, but also gets me better success at the end of the day. So I've had, yeah, that's played out
Mm.
enough now that, and a whole lot of coaching has helped me recognize that I need to take care of myself, that I am an asset just as much as anything else in my business.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%. That's really good. And do you think the early days of nose to the grindstone was necessary to get to where you are now? Or do you think if you had this philosophy and approach from the beginning of taking care of yourself more, do you think you still would have got to where you are right now?
No, because I don't think I would be in the same I don't think I could have gotten to this philosophy any other way. I could have
Mm.
heard it, like, I'd been told it for years. It's not like this was a revolutionary light bulb moment. I'd been told it for years from people that were far more experienced than me, but I was always like, "Oh, no, it's fine. I'm gonna keep going." Um, I think it took all of those iterations for me to actually internalize that philosophy. And now, like you asked me at the start here, what do my work days look like? I don't work on the weekends, and I'm very strict about that. And that is one example. That's just one of many examples of what I have learned over time. And I don't think I would have the same respect for myself today that I have now if I hadn't gone through a period of time when frankly I just didn't respect myself. I wasn't paying attention to what I needed. Um so yeah, in kind of a funny, maybe like a little bit of counterintuitive way, I did need to go through that period of time in my life to get where I am now.
Yeah, yeah. And during that period of where you said you didn't respect yourself when you were younger, what was driving you? Did you have a point to prove, or what was going on? What were the driving forces?
Uh, yeah, I had a vendetta against something. I'm still not entirely sure what that was, but I'm very stubborn, first and foremost. I'm very stubborn. I when I'm talking about values, I highly value freedom. And
Yeah.
the life of an entrepreneur is free in different kinds of ways. So I was definitely driven by that thought. I mean, this is all on the personal side. What I was building comes from this almost I I remember starting off in this space, uh, early days ethicist, and just being stunned when I would bring up the topic of ethics and people go, "Oh yeah, we don't really need that." Like, what do you mean? It's so innately part of who we are as humans. What do you mean? You'd use it every day. Like I just couldn't put two and two together. So I think I was driven by this a little bit definitely from that motivation of ethics is so incredibly important. It's fascinating. This needs to get in there, not from an activist standpoint and not for social impact, more of just we're claiming that we're creating technology that reflects us. It has to include this element. Otherwise, it
Yeah.
really doesn't reflect who we are as people. So there was that aspect. Um, that aspect of just the drive to have to that drive of, I mean, we want to accomplish something here. We need the ethics element in it. Um, and I don't know, a whole lot of coffee and me just, for whatever reason, having this kind of internal pull that I have never been able to ignore and being, again, it might be because I'm naive or if it is, then I'm glad I am naive because I've stuck to it and it's panned out for me at least.
Yeah, yeah. It seems to be like a common thread amongst the entrepreneurs I've interviewed or I've read biographies of or watched videos on or podcasts, etc., etc. Is their desire for freedom, and the freedom is dependent on the person, but fundamentally, what their definition of freedom is
Yeah,
what they want, and then also they're working towards a goal that's bigger than themselves. I think that's what Jeff Bezos says, or someone said to Jeff
yeah,
Bezos. I think it was Akira Morito from Sony told Jeff, I may be getting that wrong, but I remember Jeff Bezos
yeah,
saying something about that, about having a goal, working towards a goal bigger than yourself, and
yeah,
thinking something's not in the world or should be in the world, or people should be questioning this or talking about this, like AI ethics and responsible AI, and then bending the world in your will to do that to make it a better place. That's a very entrepreneurial thing, and I'm similar. Like I want to I just want
yeah,
to be in complete control of my time, and to me that's working on something that I genuinely love, like the podcast, and being able to make a living from that and
yeah.
benefiting people's lives because of that. So. Do you think that's like a personality type? Do you think people are born that way, or do you think it's a mixture of upbringing and what we've been exposed to as well?
I think all of the above. There's definitely I know that this is a piece from that the Silicon Valley has really Im impacted on me. I grew up with with a lot of people in this mindset, so I'm grateful to that kind of influence there. But then I've also worked with people from the Valley that just don't have the entrepreneurial bone in their body, and it's you need a special kind of crazy that really drives you for this, where you're like, I want to do something that I care about. Like I want to do
Mm,
something that I'm excited to get up at the start of the day. Like it's that and it's not only that desire, that motivation, but also you need to be very crafty. You've got to
mm,
figure out, you've got to be comfortable with figuring out how to make it work. You have to be very comfortable with the uncertainty, essentially. And that not everyone has that. And I think that is definitely some people are born with it. I don't think it's a skill that you can learn, that being that comfortable with uncertainty
mm.
in order to be able to really thrive in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, the uncertainty is what makes it worth it. And because of the uncertainty, few people do it. Therefore, it's valuable if you do embrace the uncertainty. And you mentioned patience a few minutes
Yeah.
ago. And in 2020, you retweeted the quote saying, the most overlooked and underappreciated growth strategy is patience, in brackets, more specifically, consistently producing great work over a long time horizon. How
Yeah.
much of your success so far has been through consistency over a long period? And how do we stay consistent? I mentioned I've struggled with
Yeah.
consistency in the past as a teenager, so I'd love to know.
I don't know where in the world you found that quote. Wow, you were like really good. I mean, it's a great quote. I love it. I would probably retweet it again, but oh my God, wow. You really did your research here. Um, I think patience is, oh my God, patience for me is the biggest and hardest lesson I think I've had to learn as an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur, I want to move fast. And so I'll flip between lots of different ideas because I'm full of lots of different ideas.
Mm,
And having over time learned, no, pick your priorities and then go into depth there. It's not, let me try all these different things, but instead, let me pick a medium that has the capacity for depth. because then I can apply my ideas there. Then I can apply the thinking and all that extra energy into going into depth. And that patience, that time plays out. I think some of it definitely comes, like I said, I've had the luxury of some time and going through multiple iterations of my company and everything, and even myself underneath my own name. I've seen how things grow on top of each other, and so just to give you a brief example, my speaking career continues to grow on itself. Each
Mm,
year, I have bigger stages, I have bigger venues, I have bigger speaking fees, and it's naturally grown over time because of what I did the year before. So I've
yeah.
had that reinforcement, which makes me stick on it. Other ones, um, learning patience and sticking through it. I'm not going to say I've cracked it.
Yeah.
I definitely, Lord knows my coach would yell at me if I said I had cracked it. No. But it's it's a lesson that I have had to patiently learn. I
Mm,
think honestly, I'm coming back to the book process again. That was such a pivotal moment for me because it required my patience and perseverance to write to write something so massive where each day my goal was to write 300 words. And just over and over and over again, and I normally would leave that, and instead I've managed to stick to it, and when I finished it, I went, "Oh my god, I've done something that I never thought I it was possible for me to do."
mm,
And so every time now that I'm in these processes of, "Oh, I'm tired of doing this," or, like, I feel myself drifting or something, I go back to that moment of writing the book, of that insurmountable mountain, that one that I'd been staring at for years and going, "Maybe one day." I'm on the other side of it,
yeah.
and it was because I slowly but surely chipped away at it that I'm on the other side of it, and so I try and apply that mentality of, "This will work out," and maybe a combination too of whatever scenario I get thrown in, I will figure it out.
Yeah.
So, this may take a while, and I will figure it out.
Yeah, it's having the belief that whatever happens, you can get through it. Like we're talking about the terror attacks, or the house burning down, or the burglar going into the house, or you writing a book, whatever it is. It's just that belief that you can get through it and come out the other side smarter or wiser. And I think it's so interesting with patience, because what you're talking about with the speaking thing really reminds me of compound interest, the compounding effect of how every
Yeah.
year you do it, the stage gets bigger, the fee gets bigger, the audience gets bigger, it gets more prestigious, and that's reinforcing. But when you're just starting out, maybe for the first year or two, the difference between how big the stage is and how big the fee is quite small compared to when you first started versus 10 years into the future. It's like an exponential difference. But as humans, we have such like a linear way of seeing the world compared to the exponential way of seeing the world. And if people, if we could reprogram our brains to fully comprehend how insane the compounding effect is, I think everyone would be much more consistent and patient.
Yes. I think the successful entrepreneurs are the ones that get through that first 1 to 2 years
Yeah.
where they're like, "All right, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm just gonna keep doing it," that have that, like, insane belief in themselves that I know something's gonna come out of this. I haven't that uncertainty of I don't know exactly what, but something, and I gotta stick to it. I think that's what makes or breaks that's what separates the entrepreneurs, the true ones versus the ones that, are gonna struggle or might get a lucky break. Um, it's a big difference there.
Yeah. And what was those first few years like for you? And like, was it almost like the lonely chapter, or the, I've heard someone on the show said it to me, with creating content like toiling in obscurity? You're just like posting and no one's looking at it. Like, what was that era for, like, for you, and how did you get through it, and how long was it?
Yeah. Oh, I lived in a basement. Lived in a basement, that wasn't very, very nice, and I literally lived off of next to nothing. I, worked, I don't know, 80 hours a week. It was, those were those were hard early days, and something that's interesting, I guess, an interesting I don't know if it's interesting. I didn't set out to build an audience. I didn't set out to build a brand or anything like that. It just it started to happen, I guess, by product of what I was doing, trying to build ethical intelligence in the early days. It wasn't until my brand got big enough to where I started noticing people reaching out to me like it for speaking engagements or at events, going, "Oh, I've been reading your work." Or it wasn't until I started having the external commentary of like, "Oh, you've got like a great brand, or you've got this big following." um, that I started to go, "Oh, wait a second. Oops. I didn't I didn't realize I was doing that." Now I'm much more conscious about it, and I do. So I don't think I had the early toiling days, but in sense of putting out content, I did have the early
Yeah.
toiling days of, "What the heck am I doing? I'm building a new company in a new industry under like I was not only building the company, I was building the industry at the same time." And what kept me going, you kinda need to get like a mantra in your head or like a
Yeah.
motto where it's just a ground truth for you that you come back to every single time. And for me, what it was is those hard moments, I'd sit down and I'd literally have what do you call them? The come to Jesus moments with myself, and I'm like, "All right, would you honestly, Olivia, would you be doing anything different? Like, let's say you walked away from this. What would you go and do?" And I would follow that thought path, and I always landed back into exactly where I was. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, then this is what you're doing. So go to bed, go get a nap, but this is
Yeah.
what you're doing." Because no matter what direction you're gonna go after or what direction you're gonna take, it always led me back to some form of what I was currently doing, which that was my fuel. That was my mantra of like, "Yep, this is it. All right, if this is it, I gotta figure out how to make it work."
Yeah, that's really good. I'm definitely gonna do that myself because it shows you, I guess, that there is no alternative. There is no plan B. It's plan A or death. My mum said to me in the car a few weeks ago. She was like, "Oh, so like, what are you gonna do if like the podcast doesn't work?" And I was like, "Do you have a plan B?" And I was like, "No, there's no plan B, only plan A." Like you just like I just
Correct.
have that belief in myself, you know. And I
Yeah,
think that's really good. Just thinking, what else would I be doing? Because as soon as you were talking about that, if I was thinking of what I would be doing if I was running through that fourth experiment, and I was like, what else would I do? Like the only other option is like working in an office for someone, and that's like death for me. So like
yep.
I'm not going to do that. Let me just carry on doing this and have a nap, like you said. So I
I
think
did
everyone should take that from the conversation and use it.
it's I think to that point, I think you'll resonate with this too. I remember, um, years ago, um, I was talking to this guy and he was like, "Why do you live your life like this? This is so complicated. This is so like th- I mean, this is, I don't know, maybe a few years into ethical intelligence, but and to this whole entire path. But he's like, why do you do this? This is so hard. Like this is the hard way of doing life. You're living every single like mode on hard or on expert mode. Like why? Why are you doing this?" And I remember looking at him, and he worked an office job. I remember looking at him and I was like, "Because this is easy for me. Your path
Mm,
is the hard path for me.
yeah.
This path is the easy path for me." And that I think is the thing that like some entrepreneurs, that is the truth. And that's what we get pulled
Mm.
back towards.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. You know, it's like the Naval quote of saying like, do work that looks like work to others but feels like play to you. And obviously it's hard work, but if you
Yeah.
enjoy it and if it feels like play and you wouldn't want to do anything else like what we're saying, then you've you've kind of cracked the code in life. Now it's just letting it compound and you be able to get the results and get the proof of concept and eventually, you know, make it work and be successful at it and benefit people's lives. And it's just getting through those early years like you have, and
Yeah.
now look at you, done all this, you've done doing all these talks, you're writing two different books, you've founded a company. But so many people want to do that, but they're just too scared of sticking with it, or they just don't know how to stay in the game long enough to get the results. So I really appreciate the insights and the advice you're giving to all of us. And I also read a reply that you wrote on, I think it's called Quora, that like
Oh my
thing
goodness.
that's kind of
Wow.
like Reddit. Yeah, and you were replying to a question saying how true is the saying the smarter you get, the less you speak.
What did I write? What was my
You
response?
agreed with it. See, I can't remember exactly what you wrote, but you agreed with it, and you said the more it's almost like what you're saying with Einstein and physics. Like
Yeah, yeah.
the more he learned about physics, the more he like believed in God. And I guess the smarter you get, the less you speak, because the more you learn about a topic, the more you realize you don't know about the topic. So therefore, you speak less and absorb more knowledge because you know how much there is to still learn. That's kind of the general premise of what you
Yeah.
wrote. Do you still agree with
Oh
that?
goodness. Yes, but I would revise it just a little. This is ironic coming from someone that speaks for a living, or one part of my living I speak. Um, so I guess maybe I've gotten dumber if I'm speaking a lot more there. But I think I would revise this to say the smarter you get, the less you speak because you're asking more questions. I find
Mm,
that the more that I've learned, it doesn't matter what I'm saying. It's
yeah.
matters how I'm asking questions. That unlocks different doors that a lot of my work is sensitive. Ethics is a sensitive subject. AI can be a sensitive subject. I'm in sensitive industries. Like it doesn't matter if I'm coming in and telling you need to do something. You need to believe that you need to do it. You need to
Mm,
have that core understanding. And I can lecture with PowerPoints until I'm blue in the face and you can
mm,
still not believe it. But it takes the right question from my end that gets your thinking of, oh, that put it in a new lens and now I get why now I get why this happens or now I get why this works. And so that I think is probably the revision I would add is the smarter you get, the more questions you ask.
That's really, really good. And what is the insight you want people to take away from this conversation? Would it be that, or are there any other ones as well that you would want people to take from this conversation?
I definitely like that one. I think I'm gonna use
Yeah,
that.
that's a good one.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna use that
definitely.
going forward. Um, I'm definitely gonna use that going forward. I think, God, we've talked about so many different pieces. If we're looking at the world of AI, know your need. Don't assume that you need AI. There's lots of points in your life that you don't need it, and that's just as valid as the points that you want to use it. So know your
Mm,
need. But then from an entrepreneurial perspective, um, having the support for you as the individual, I think is something that doesn't necessarily get talked about enough or referenced enough. Like we talked a lot about how I'm very, very strict about how I'm treating myself now.
mm,
And understanding that is will lead to success rather than just you need to do this, but that does lead to success and that you do deserve the support. You don't have to go at it alone. And
mm.
if you don't have the support, um, go find it. That's
Yeah.
that's that's what's gonna carry you through a lot of that turmoil of up and down. So yeah, I don't know. I guess that's a couple good couple of
Yeah,
reflections
yeah.
on the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, no, really, really good. And as a final question, if you could give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be and why?
You know, I'm gonna have a funny answer to this. I don't think I would give her any advice. I would give her a hug. And I'd give her a hug and say, "All right, this is this this is not gonna be easy, but
Mm,
you're keep at it. Like this
mm.
is not gonna be easy, and that's what's gonna make it worth it." So I don't think that's advice. I think that maybe a forewarning, but I think I would just give her a hug and be like, "All right, I know what you're about to go through, and thank you." I guess in a way, because it's what I went through in those days that brought me here, and that has made the world of a difference.
Olivia Gambelin, ladies and gentlemen, Olivia, Really, really appreciate this. This was great. I haven't done a 2 hour one for a while, and they're always the best. You know, they're just like the sweet spot, I think, of topics we can explore and conversation we can have. So yeah, I really appreciate your time, your insights, and everything you shared with me today. Where can people go if they want to find out more about you and your work?
Well, easiest place to find everything is my website, so oliviagambelin.com. You can find my Substack, you can find the AI literacy course, you can find ethical intelligence, you can find all of my social channels, and probably a few other bits and bobs that I've forgotten on that website. They're all linked there. Best place to go.
Awesome. Awesome. I'll leave it in the show notes. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks so much, Jacob.
If you've made it this far, you're likely not just a listener, you're ready to be the host. You felt that sense of intimacy and connection with our guest today, and you would like to get the same on your own show and start your own dream show. But you're worried about landing dream guests and all the complications and the mess that is often spoken about when starting your own podcast from scratch. You think starting a podcast requires a huge budget and a whole team, right? That is absolute nonsense. My pro remote podcast blueprint is the ultimate key to skipping the outdated advice and building a high quality, high impact show, even for under $100. It provides the proven strategies and AI templates that I use to this day that you will be able to use to reclaim your time and creative control. And this is a strictly limited opportunity. Don't dilly-dally because there's limited spaces. We've already got one student, Rob, who's joined. That means there's only a couple more spaces to get the Pro Remote Podcast Blueprint course half price. And you need to act very, very fast because this is a limited offer and you're very, very early. So if you want to get the early bird discount like Rob has and get the results by watching the course that goes through the exact step-by-step blueprint that I use to this day to create these episodes that you've just watched and get to the success and become Europe's fastest growing under 21 podcaster, and also join live weekly calls with me and use the AI templates and email templates that I use every single day to get the results and just get all my secrets without getting any of the mistakes and failures that I've made, then top link in the description is for you. And if you're ready to launch your own show and get personalized one-to-one help from me and copy my blueprint, which no other podcaster has shared, then I'll see you there. I'm rooting for you. Goodbye. Hope you enjoyed the episode too.